Tape Deck Media.
Hey gang, Taylor here, just dropping in before the episode to humbly request that you fill out a survey I've got going at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how many listeners I've got, where they are, what they like about the show, what they don't like about the show, and what I can do better moving forward. So if you're a regular or even sporadic listener of Ruddle Me This, I'd like you to head along to taylorruddle.com/survey and that'll redirect you to a Google form. Just trying to figure out what direction to head the podcast in moving forward, and any suggestions you have would be very gratefully accepted. Alrighty, back to the show. Enjoy the episode. Good morning, Ruddle Maniacs. Welcome back to another episode of Ruddle Me This. I am, as always, your host, Taylor Antibiotic Ruddle. We are up to episode 70. Man, where does the time go, eh? So, several weeks ago, by the time this episode has dropped, I ended up rewatching the 2011 movie Contagion for the first time. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you check it out. It is scary how accurately it predicted everything that happened when we had a real pandemic in real life. You know, they were using terms such as social distancing, like 8 years prior to the COVID pandemic. And there was something really satisfying to me about seeing the whole system work through. How do I explain that better? Seeing the protocols that they enacted, like quarantining people and setting up the vaccination centers and actually trying to figure out what the vaccination was. It was all very satisfying to my brain. And so that got me thinking again about the pandemic, and it reminded me of my comedy special, All My COVID Jokes. So I thought it could be fun to do a little bit of an album commentary. This is something that, if you're a listener of Ari Shaffir's old podcast, Skeptic Tank, you'll be familiar with the concept of an album commentary. But I'm basically just going to play the whole the whole special in its entirety, and I'll pause it every now and then to add a little bit more context. I might talk about how I wrote the joke, how long I've been doing the joke, just anything that I think would be interesting to the listener. So off the bat, the special was called All My COVID Jokes, and I had a few options that I was going to call it. I think one of my first potential names for it was going to be Taylor Ruddle, Sick of COVID Jokes, because I thought you get a nice little double pun there in having sick in the title. And then the other one that I thought of kind of recently, and I thought, damn, I really should have called the show that, was Contagious, but the T, it's like T-A-Y as in Taylor, Contagious. But also at the same time, I think All My COVID Jokes has a nice kind of ring to it, and I felt like it would be a little bit easier to find when you're Googling, COVID stand-up comedy. So we ended up going with All My COVID Jokes. I filmed it in 2022, I believe, and then I kind of sat on it for a year. My good friend Jake Brown Creative, he was the one that was behind the glass on that one. We filmed it at the Wigram Hotel, which was a place we used to do our sort of monthly comedy gig at, and I think there were probably 10 to 15 genuine audience members, and then a few of the other comedians sitting watching from the back. The reason I decided to record it was because at the time it felt like the pandemic was ending. It wasn't. I mean, it's still technically going some 2 years later, but I could feel a lot of the COVID-related jokes weren't really getting the laughs that they were used to getting at the open mics and other shows that I was on. So I thought, okay, while there's still a tiny bit of orange juice left in the fruit, let's record it, and then I'll stop doing the jokes, and then I can move on and chuck it online, hopefully at a later point when people were less fatigued by COVID material. Alright, so that's enough of the context and the preamble. Let's start the special.
My favourite part about that was when she said, "Most of you are here to see Taylor," and the whole room collectively went, "Who?"
Nocturnals represent.
Alright, so I've got my first interjection. This could be quite a long podcast, but I just wanted to say that opening gag of the most of you here to see Taylor and the whole room collectively went, "Who?" Probably my favourite ever opening to a comedy show because it was 100% true. I don't remember if we advertised. I think I do remember advertising it as I'm going to be filming my special, but it was also just taking part on like a regular comedy night that we were doing. I just happened to be filming my set at the end, so genuinely none of the audience had any idea who I was. I think most of them were just people on holiday who were staying at the hotel and like wanted to kill an evening. So yeah, that reaction was was 100% true. But I think that started the show off to like the perfect note. And then as another aside, I love, I don't know what it is about like lo-fi trap music, but I love that for comedy specials. I've used it in my Rudzilla special as well. And this was a good place to chuck this in. I got a YouTube comment on one of my videos that just made me laugh, and I may share it one day with just the caption, "The Duality of Man," because it was 2 comments from the same person. And the first one said, "Nice, man, you got good content, keep it up." And then another comment from the same person saying, "But lose that gay-ass trap music." And so if that person is listening, I just wanted to say the reason I chose the trap music was because it was gay. So no, I'm going to be leaving the gay-ass trap music in all of my specials going forward. Hope you understand.
You know, one of my favourite things about us having to wear masks all the time is when you actually take your mask off, you get this interesting experience of smelling a room that you've been in like a million times for the first time, again as if you're entering it for the first time. I might put this back on actually. Do you know, a friend of mine actually said to me recently-ish, he was like, you know, Taylor, for how you look, you smell surprisingly good. Which is a weird thing to say to somebody, right? I don't really know if it's a compliment or an insult.
So that "you smell surprisingly good" thing, again, 100% true, not something I made up there. It was a comedian friend of mine from back in sort of maybe 2018-ish, Vasu Premkumar. I think he's still doing stand-up comedy up in Auckland to this day. He genuinely said that after we had a hug, hello, or goodbye, I can't remember. And I think he thinks I took it like not the wrong way, but I think he feels bad because he felt like that was a bad thing to say to me. But that joke has gotten me so many laughs over the years. So, I mean, I doubt Vasu is listening to the podcast, but if you are, thank you very much. Appreciate your honesty there.
There's another one that I don't know if it's an insult or a compliment. Is my girlfriend said to me she finds me more attractive when I have a beard, which is a kind of like roundabout way of saying, you know, your face. The less I can see of it, the more I like it. She's actually hung this up on our bedroom door. Be kind to others. Please wear a face covering, Taylor. I tell you what though, I snore so badly, the only thing she wants to cover my face with in the bedroom is a pillow. Alright, you guys are not there for the dark stuff. That's okay. Because there was a follow-up line to that, but I'm not going to say it. You want to say it? Yeah. Okay, so I told her that joke, but the only thing she'd change is she said she'd use a clear plastic bag because I have a pretty face. You win some, you lose some, right? Yeah, she should be the one up here, not me.
Not a lot of context to add to that whole section, but to be honest, listening back to it again, I'm really happy with the strength of the laughs that those jokes got. And a little piece, if you've watched the special, you will know that I took out a custom version of one of the official New Zealand COVID posters, which I had a lot of fun finding the actual official PDF, downloading it, and then editing it so that it was my face, using the correct fonts and everything. So, yeah, that was a legit piece of graphic design work that I did there.
So lockdown. We did some lockdown. I don't really have many jokes about lockdown because I don't know if you can tell, but my life changed very little. You know when we all went for our government mandated walk, and you'd see people out on the street, and they just have that look on their face like, I'm going to talk to this guy. And for me, that was just the worst thing ever, but it was great because I could have an excuse to basically tell them to fuck off when they were going to talk to me in public. So I really enjoyed that. Sometimes it wouldn't work, but they would kind of continue, and then you just start coughing, and they're like, all right, I'm going to peace out of this conversation.
I think in hindsight, I probably could have come up with a better punchline for this segment here. I couldn't really think of anything. I was just sort of talking about, like, genuinely what I was doing during the lockdowns, and yeah, those walks with my brother were actually a lot of fun. We don't spend a lot of time together doing anything particularly exercisey, so that was quite nice to be able to go on those walks with him. And yeah, we would always walk past people that would be standing at the end of their driveway, obviously trying to get a little bit of fresh air or whatever at the end of a day, because we used to go for walks sort of in the evening times. And I'm a big rule follower, so I was very strict with not coming into contact with other people and obeying social distancing and stuff, but I could just see by the look on people's faces that they were gonna, oh, that's a bit cheeky of us. We probably shouldn't be having this and like, you know, they would really wanted to have a chat at the end of the driveway, but no, we were very like, no, and then we'd cross the road, and yeah, so a little bit of context there.
We watched those things, right? The Jacinda and Dr. Bloomfield, those like daily updates with how many COVID cases we had. You guys all remember watching those?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I actually never watched them. Let me finish. I used to just go to YouTube and I would look at the thumbnail, and then I would just kind of see how stressed they looked on the thumbnail. Like, you know, if Jacinda was doing this, probably not a good day for COVID cases, right?
This bit here was 100% true. I never used to watch the daily COVID check-ins that Jacinda Ardern and Dr. Ashley Bloomfield used to do. Man, at the time of recording this, we don't have Jacinda as our Prime Minister, and man, I miss Jacinda. I'm not a big fan of the current government we've got in power at the moment. Just to get on my soapbox there a little bit. But yeah, after a certain point, I genuinely just used to look at how stressed her face was on the thumbnail of the YouTube video, and then be like, yeah, it's probably a good few hundred cases popping up today if she was like biting her finger or grimacing or anything.
I have some friends that were in Japan, and you know how we had the COVID tracer app, and like we were all social distancing and stuff. They didn't have that over there. They were kind of just left to it, like, oh, you guys figure this out. And I got a friend who owns a bar over there, and he said what they were doing is they made an account for their bar on this chat app, like WhatsApp or something, and people would message them, say like, how many people have you got in the bar? Have you got enough space for us? And my friend that was living over there was like, I never thought I'd get to the stage of life where I had to be sending these like 2 a.m. booty call messages to my favourite bar. Just at 2 a.m. like, hey, you up right now? And then when they don't reply, you send something really desperate like, I wish I could be inside you right now.
I always felt like the final punchline there of the I wish I could be inside you right now was kind of hacky, but it was one of those jokes where I had to just resort to the comedic technique to get the laugh, because the actual idea itself wasn't getting that gut laughter out of the audience like I'd hoped it would. I also used to run it with a bit where I would say you send them a photo of an empty beer glass with the caption, maybe you could help me sort this problem out. It was just, I had a few more kind of like F-boy booty call, like up to 2 a.m. messages. But yeah, they never really, I don't know, it just wasn't resonating with people. It wasn't really working. So I think I just trimmed that down to its barest form and then left the cheap laugh of the I wish I could be inside you right now. And called it a day and moved on.
They created a vaccine, didn't they? That was the big thing. Do you remember when the campaign was get it to 90%? That was like the whole thing, which is a very Kiwi sort of attitude to it. Like not 100%, like 90 should be right. You know, just somewhere in the vicinity of 100, and everybody will be fine. And it took us a while to get there, didn't it? We were kind of hovering around 60% for a while. And I had this, I wish they'd done this, but it never. Do you guys remember when the Australians had that bushfire, like right at the start of the pandemic? And there was that woman, I think her name was Caitlin Ward. Do you guys remember what she did? She raised $700,000 for the Australian bushfires. by sending a naked photo of herself to anybody that donated over $10. We should have got Mrs. Ward over here to do something like that. Give her a government subsidy or something like that. We would have been at like 240% vaccinated. People are up to dose like 7 or something like that.
Now, this piece here, I was actually really happy with the ideas behind it. It was a relatively late addition to this set that I didn't have a lot of time to kind of workshop at the open mics, but I was always very happy. I didn't have enough time to run this and find out what the funniest number was. I don't think 240% vaccinated was the funniest number. It probably would have been... we have this weird quirk of mine where I try to do that exaggerating for comedic effect, but I don't go far enough into the exaggeration. So probably the funniest, the funniest number to choose would have been like 1200% or something really ridiculous. I don't know, just a funny comedic thing. For those into the wordsmithing craft of jokes, but I believe out there in the English language somewhere there was a funniest possible number that I could have chosen, but I just didn't have the time to trial and error and kind of figure out what that number was. I was also I was I was very afraid doing this bit out there because in recent years, you've got to be very careful when you do jokes about anything to do with sex work because, I'll just lead by saying this. I fully support it as a job choice, and I think it's real work and all that. Like I'm in favor of it. But where I'm probably not as woke as I could be is I still think it's funny to use it in jokes, which maybe some of the Zoomers and people of the next generation, that it might not be so cool to do so anymore. So I was trying to make sure that this joke was not poking fun at the lady for doing that, but suggesting that it would work for other solutions, i.e. in this case to get the national vaccination level up to 90% like they had wanted. Like, it's relatively rare that I worry about being cancelled or getting in trouble or having to apologise for a joke, but this was definitely one that I thought I really need to be careful with how I word this because it could very easily be taken the wrong way. But overall, I was very happy with how that joke came out. I just wish I'd had a little bit more time to workshop it.
When the hand sanitizer went all kind of weird. Does anyone else remember? Like, it went slimy. Does anyone else? Was it just me that was noticing that?
The one that was that.
Even now, is it still rough? Oh, geez, okay, I've got a pretty good batch in my little can over there. I don't know what happened. They must, Big Sammy must be stepping on it with something, right? Taking something out of the cocaine drug dealer's handbook there. Yeah, they're watering it. I don't, does it feel like saliva to anyone else, or is it just like a little bit, right?
Again, this is something true. I genuinely believe that they did change the formula of hand sanitizer at some point, and it became way slimier and just less pleasant to use. I also just find that that joke writing convention of calling something big, whatever, just funny. I think the original version of that comes from Big Pharma, but I've been trying to write a joke where the punchline is calling the punchline would be like big small or big little. I don't know exactly what the context of it would be, but I've always wanted to try and big tiny. Yeah, I don't know. I've been attempting to write a joke using that big something formula in kind of like a one-liner format for ages, but I have yet to actually come up with one that is funny and people get it, so we'll keep trying there. But yeah, no, I genuinely believe that I'm guessing they had to start, what did I say in the joke, stepping on it with something, like their cocaine dealers, in order to keep up with the supply.
We got those PCO tests as well. Raise your hand or give us a little cheer if you've had one of the up the nose tests before. Very, very weak hand raises there. It's very Christchurch. The first couple you get really hurt.
I've actually only just just realised listening to that bit now, some kind of 2 years later, I actually called it by the wrong name. I think the correct one is PCR test, but I called them PCO tests. And the reason that's kind of funny to me is because PCO is actually a wrestler. I think he's still going now. But yeah, he was a guy that was wrestling well into his, like, the twilight years, and he was taking moves far crazier than he should have been at his age, but somehow still keep going on. So evidently that was a bit of a Freudian slip there. And PCO test when I should have said PCR test.
Like, we have so many for stand-up, we've got to get them, like, pretty much every week for travelling around and stuff. And for me...
I should also interject here and say that's not strictly true. I think I was just chucking that in there to try and sound like a big shot comic who travels around a lot. I think at the time I wasn't doing a heap of travelling. Although that being said, we did have to, in the beginning, we had to be super conscious of whether we were sick or not going to a show, because you could pretty quickly knock out half the comedy scene if a few of you either were household contacts or like actually had COVID.
They really hurt in the beginning. But then after a few, you kind of just go numb to it and, like, you know, I think it's going to start feeling good soon. I've been asking them at Orchard Road to stick 3 up there, just so that I can feel something. One for Jacinda, one for Dr. Bloomfield, and one for me.
There was another joke there that was quite clean and polished for how sort of ramshackle the production of this special was. I was quite happy with that. With that word economy there, that is rare for this special. I don't think I messed with it too much in the editing. I'm pretty sure I got that pretty much as is on the night. The big laugh you would have heard there was Eve Wingerath, very, very funny comedian. I was quite happy to hear her laughing on that one there. So I don't think Eve's listening, but if you are, shout out to you, Eve. It makes me just happy to hear my friends laughing in the background of the special.
There was this interesting phase. Do you remember when the whole, like, are you vaccinated or not? It became like a whole thing, like it was a real divide in the community. And if you're on any of the dating apps, like Tinder and stuff like that, people would have a bunch of emojis for how many vaccinations they'd had. And then you'd see some profiles that would have no emojis, but they'd have this big long spiel of things about how they're like a creative and a spiritualist and a free thinker and anarchist and all this. And you're just reading it going, you are definitely unvaccinated. You're dodging the question, friend.
So I believe directly after this bit here, I could be wrong, but I did cut out a big chunk of the special because of... It was what the routine was me talking about. We had like our own, for any American folks listening, we had our version of the what were they, the Proud Boys occupying the White House, kind of. We had a I actually don't know how long it was now. It was several days long, but there was a protest right on the sort of the grounds of the Beehive, which is our parliamentary building. And I don't remember if it was actually that violent or not. I suspect some of it was a bit of propaganda from, you know, the government and the cops and stuff trying to paint it as though it was more violent than it was. But again, this is a while ago now. I can't really remember. But there was just a whole big pile of tents parked. Like, people were basically living at this park. And if I remember correctly, the reason they're protesting is because in New Zealand they made it basically illegal to work in healthcare. I think there was some other industries that you couldn't work either, but you had to be 2 or 3, I can't remember, it was double vaccinated, or you had to have 2 or 3 shots in order to work in healthcare. And that was a big, like, I met a lot of people sort of in passing that actually lost their job because they didn't want to, I think it was, I don't know, some people were less conspiracy theorists. They're trying to control our brain, and more like they just didn't like the idea that it was something that the government could force people to do, which I have kind of mixed feelings on. But so there was this big occupy the grounds, and it was against that whole idea that the government could force us to do that. And I remember genuinely one time I was driving along and I saw... I don't know what it was. It was like a tent. It was like a tent store or a tent sales yard, and it was just a big pile of tents. And I genuinely got a little bit of like, my heart started beating faster because I thought, oh God, like, it's another protest, it's a protest or something. And then, so that led into a bit where I started talking about what would the, that's right, yes, I remember now. So I was in at the pharmacy getting my vaccination, and I noticed that there was a packet of vitamins, and it said something to the effect of, like, boost your immune strength, protect your family. And I remember thinking that felt really fear-mongering to me, like trying to sell our products based on some of the rhetoric. Like, a lot of people that were anti-vaccinations would say things like, I trust my immune system to take care of me and all that kind of thing. And I just remember the initial seed of the bit was me talking about how companies will do anything to sell products. So I thought, imagine a tent store that had, like, the normal tents on one side and then the Freedom Edition on the other side. And I can't remember how exactly the bit went, but it was like, a guy goes into the tent store and the salesman sees that he's wearing a MAGA hat, MAGA, but it said, make Ardern go away, which is they made versions of the hat here in New Zealand. And the gag was essentially like, it's sun protected because obviously you care about your health, and something about it being extra flammable at the end, because there was a thing at the end of the protest where they all got, it's either the cops or someone lit the tents on fire and it caused a big fire, and so that was the controversy there. And so I had the joke, and I can't remember if it got a laugh or not. It probably didn't. I don't think it was a particularly good bit. But I cut it out of the special because, much like that sort of sex worker joke, I wasn't confident in I wasn't confident in the way that I'd written the joke, that it came across with the right tone, because I had seen some friends that were like Māori and Pacific Islander, and they were talking about how people from these communities do have genuine reasons to be distrustful of the government because of similar things that people have been mandated to do that ended up not being good for their health in the past. Like, along with the general, like, colonization thing going on in New Zealand. So I thought, I'm not informed enough, like, on either side of that argument. The joke wasn't, like, amazing, and I thought, it's not a hill that I should be willing to die on. So I cut that from the special. But I thought I might talk about it here. It might be an interesting little tidbit for any of you listeners there. That might be interesting for you to learn.
The vaccine passports that we had. Mm-hmm. Yeah, who's happy to see them go? Woo! Interesting. Who misses them? I really miss them, to be honest. You're one person who is. The reason I miss them. Now, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I should make this clear at the start. But I used to pretend to be one when I didn't want to go to something that somebody has invited. Like, don't get me wrong, if it was like going to the movies with an attractive lady or something, like, I've got my 2 shots, I got my vax passport here, I got my booster booked in, I'm sweet as. But if I got invited to like a funeral, or like a high school reunion, or like a distant relative's birthday party, then suddenly I change my tune and I'm like, I just don't think we know enough about what's inside it. I really trust my immune system to keep me safe here. I think we just got to stop this discrimination and open our hearts. The term I came up with for this, whenever people would ask me if I'm vaccinated or not, is I would say I'm vax fluid.
That's another quite a good little bit there. You'll just have to take my word for it, but several weeks prior to the recording of this, that joke used to bring the house down with how hard people would laugh at it. And like I said at the start, the COVID jokes weren't really getting, they didn't have the juice that they used to have. So you're just going to have to take my word for it there. But that used to be like closer level material. That used to, I'd be getting applause breaks and everything off it. But yeah, very happy with just the writing of that. I think the term vax fluid is really funny. I was slightly worried that I might invoke the ire of some of the more woke comedians that I was sort of lightly taking a jab at the whole gender fluid kind of thing, but no, never had any of them say anything to me, and one of them even said that it was quite a clever line, so I think I was worried for nothing there. But yeah, one of my favourite bits, if nothing else as well, because I love a bit where I get to be like irresponsible or misanthropic or cowardly or anything like that, and getting to be a sort of like this exaggerated level of a shut-in or a recluse was just a lot of fun for me to do. I really enjoy bits where I get to be that kind of character.
So I did get vaccinated in the end, and this is how much of a, like, I just can't stop the comedy thing, because the guy stuck the needle into my arm and I went, hello, there it is. And I got like a big laugh out of the guy, and I was like, all right, I'm killing him. I'm destroying the room right now. And then he says to me, okay, your vaccination's done, go and sit in the waiting room and let us know if you have any side effects. And at first of all, it was like, they don't actually tell you what side effects to watch for. They just like, if you start to feel strange, and you're like, man, I've been feeling strange for like 30 years now. I went to the movie theatre. You remember we had that weird eye of the storm gap where like we thought everything was cool and then it got way worse like real quick? I went to the movies in this time, and there was an announcement that went on before the movie started, and it said, Kia ora, New Zealand. Here's 3 things we're doing to keep you safe during the pandemic. Number 1, we're washing high traffic in areas of the cinema more regularly. Number 2, please book your tickets and snacks using the app. Number 3, please take your rubbish with you when you leave the cinema. And if you're like me, you'd be listening to this list and you're like, well, that's one thing you're doing. And then just 2 things you want us to do. And you're trying to claim that as 3 things you're doing to keep us safe. So ladies in the crowd tonight, can you imagine if your man came home one night and he was just like, all right, love, got a new 3-step plan in place to make me a more sensitive and caring lover and to make sure you're fully satisfied at the end of the night. Step number 1, we're going to have sex as normal, nothing different. Step number 2, I have bought you a vibrator. Please use this on yourself. Step number 3, please take all your rubbish with you when you leave. I thought that because I was going.
Another little routine that I was very happy with. I feel like it's gotten better laughs than it did on the night. But yeah, no, I really was happy with that little piece. I think throughout this show, there's a lot of stuff that could have been better. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure like that could have been improved too. I could have ran it for a bit longer, but yeah, no, I was very happy with that little routine. I was sad to have to drop that when this special released. And again, completely true story. I went to the Silky Otter cinemas in Wigram here in Christchurch, and genuinely, without a shred of irony, said that those were three things they were doing to keep us safe. And in the moment, I went, but that's only one thing you're doing. It's just 2 things you want us to do. So yeah, it's a beautiful moment when a bit comes from a real life observation that you have, just like that. So yeah, very happy with that little piece. Would have been nice to keep developing it and sort of keep it around. I'm kind of curious. I might run that piece at an open mic because you know the pandemic's sort of in the rearview mirror-ish now. So maybe I'll be able to squeeze a little more blood out of that stone. I'll keep you posted.
You guys all know what a QR code is now? So I'm a graphic designer by trade, and we've been trying to make QR codes happen for like the last 10 years, but it's never really caught on until recently. Yeah, man, all it takes is a global pandemic and people finally figure it out. Like, I'm aware that me saying that's a silver lining, you know, it's like after what? Countless deaths, a serious divide in our community, and probably irreversible damage to our economy. Silver lining, people know how to use a QR code now. It would be a bit like me talking to a former heroin addict, and he's like, well, yeah, you know, after the loss of my home, my job, and my complete and utter alienation from my friends and family, the one takeaway from me doing heroin is I learned how to tie a tourniquet around my arm really good. been wanting to know how to do that for years, but I was too shy to ask.
2 years later, I still stand by this piece. Little silver lining from the pandemic is people are familiar with a QR code. Genuinely, I've lost count of how long we graphic designers have been trying to get QR codes to catch on. So, say nothing else for the pandemic, but at least people know how to scan a QR code now. It's certainly made my job slightly easier trying to advertise, ticketing links on posters. You can just chuck a big QR code up on there. This is how OG I am with QR codes. So I was living in Japan from 2014 to 2019, something around that. And back in 2014, our company's business card had a QR code on the back of it. So we're not just some bandwagon jumping QR code Johnny come latelys. We've been putting in the work, man. We've been trying to spread the good word, spread the gospel of the QR code for 10 years now. So, I'm happy that the QR code's finally getting its roses. And a little piece of trivia for you that I only just recently learned myself, but QR actually stands for Quick Response Code. So, yeah, take that to your next pub quiz.
So for this next joke, I'm going to need my volunteer. Jimmy, would you mind, can you guys give a round of applause to Jimmy? This is a routine I used to do before COVID. You're going to see why it doesn't work anymore. So if you could just stand there, Jimmy, that'd be awesome. I'm often not good with people. I misjudge how close I am with people emotionally. And a woman was leaving my work, and she was going around the office and giving some people handshakes and some people hugs. And I figured, we're not that close. We'll probably just be a handshake. And then, as it turns out, she went in for a hug. So, Jimmy, you could just put your hands out like you're going in for a hug. I went in for a handshake, and we sort of just met in the middle like this. Which is not a good start. Luckily, she saw what was happening, and she took my hand. And then we just shook hands at like this distance. Now, a normal handshake is at about this difference, and that's very comfortable, isn't it, Jimmy? From here, it's not good. So thank you very much, Jimmy, for your help. You can see why I used to close shows by talking about this routine, and you can see why I can't do it anymore, because we have a disease that literally is do not get close to people. So thanks God, I finally get a good routine I can close shows with, and he's like, nah, fuck you, it's too good. You can have
Another true little anecdote there. That handshake story was genuinely a thing that happened to me. We shook hands at like a foot away from each other, and it was quite funny because when it happened, I didn't feel super uncomfortable at the time. Well, I did, but I thought that's odd. I didn't understand why it was a bit of a weird, awkward handshake. And then I just kept ruminating on it. And then several days later, I was like, oh, it's because we were like a foot from each other's face when we did the handshake. So that's when I started formulating that idea of like, that's just one of those little gifts from God when you notice a social convention that you haven't heard any stand-ups talk about it before. Like one piece I always am reminded of is Dimitri Martin. He has a routine about how leather jackets are cool, leather vests are not cool, so that means leather sleeves are cool. And I just remember hearing that bit and being like, that's a great observation. And so I think if I had my time over again, I would probably work more into that bit and talk about, like really getting into the weeds of it and find out what is the minimum possible distance to still be comfortable when shaking someone's hand. I also had a piece in that routine that I obviously dropped it for the special, but I used to talk about how, as someone who's not great at, someone who's, if you're following my career at the moment, you might know what my next fringe show is going to be about. Someone who's seriously considering getting an autism test and therefore is not great with social cues at the best of times. So I don't like to presume that anyone is going to try and would anyone be keen for a hug in public, basically. So I generally don't touch people in general, just as a kind of it feels like such a deliberate movement to lift my hand, move it over to somebody, and then like say pat them on the back, or like I'll give a fist bump. I remember a good friend of mine in Japan, Fernanda. She was a stand-up comic. I think does more improv now. I think she still does a little bit of stand-up, but she was in the crew of us when we were coming up doing stand-up over there in Fukuoka. And she was mystified that the first time we met, I just offered her a fist bump, like a dap, and for some reason to her that was the most awkward thing in the world. But like, I don't know, it just felt, I don't know, it's a very non-committal gesture, you know what I mean? It's like nudging someone else's fist with your fist. Like, there's not a lot of room for misconstruing, or like, you know, you don't hold the hug for too long. Like, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into a hug and even a handshake. How hard do you squeeze? How long do you squeeze for? All that kind of mental overthinking that goes on in my head whenever I'm in either a hug or handshake scenario. So, to cut a long story short, the bit would talk about how whenever I was approaching someone for a greeting or a goodbye, I felt like I was in a gunslinger in the Old West kind of shootout, where I had to get my hand up for the handshake before they could spread their arms for a hug. And it was that kind of like, draw, you know, fastest hand in the West kind of thing. But at the time, it never really seemed to get a laugh. I think it's quite funny thinking about it now, and this is a couple of years later, so I may be slightly more better at articulating things, so I could potentially get it to work if I wanted to play around with it now. But that was a piece from the cutting room floor, was talking about how I always felt like I had to beat them in the quick draw to make sure that I wasn't in a potentially awkward hug or handshake scenario.
Because every time I brought someone on stage, something funny happened every single time. Like the first time it happened, when I stuck my hand into the guy's chest, he just went, oh. Which was great. Another time I did the handshake thing with him, and then as I'm kind of, hey, thanks for coming up, he leans in and he's like, that was the most intimate I've been with anyone in a long time. Yeah, hell, right? And then my favourite time that happened is I brought a guy on stage who didn't say a word to me. He just kind of walked up and was looking at me. He went through with the whole handshake thing. We said, hey, thanks. And he went and sat back down. And then he said something in Russian to the woman that he was sitting with. And it turned out he didn't speak English. And so I said, oh, did he not understand what any of that was there? Like, I just brought him on stage and like shook his hand really close and said, hey, cheers, and sent him back to his seat. She's like, yeah, pretty much. And so I said, well, what did he say to you when he got back off stage? And she said, he said to me, that man smells a lot better than he looks.
As you can imagine, I would have liked a stronger applause break there, but I was just happy that they remembered what was probably the first or second joke of the night. There's definitely an art form to leaving enough time between the setup of a callback and then actually doing the callback to give them enough time to forget about it, but not enough time to completely forget about it. So yeah, I was very happy to get my little smells better than he looks, smells surprisingly good callback in there, and they also seem to enjoy it.
But that's pretty much all the end of the COVID stuff. One last thing I want to say before we let you go is please remember to take all your rubbish with you when you leave. Thanks everyone, I've been Taylor Ruddle.
I've been getting better at this, but I've always been so bad at the ending a show on a strong note. I think I wasn't too bad with my last special that just came out, the Rudzilla one. I think I delivered the final callback, and then I think I said, well, hey, that's the show. But really what I need to be more strict on with myself is to deliver the last punchline, then just say thanks and good night, and then take a bow and leave the stage. And so that's basically I just did it again. That's all my COVID jokes. I'm going to play a little bit more of the audio at the end because we did record something over the credits where I wanted to. I had this mad fantasy that I was going to be able to get 15 minutes of polished stand-up material released like 3 or 4 times throughout the year, which obviously never happened. It's the fact that like nearly 2 years later, I released my full kind of hour special. But yeah, Jake, the guy, the fella who was filming the whole special, he thought we'll just do some casual kind of interviews in the back and give us some B-roll for the credits to actually play over. And I think we recorded this bit of me explaining what we were trying to do about 4 times. Frankly, like, even the one that we used, which was the best of the best of the lot, was awful. Just hearing it back now, I was like, oh, geez, that ain't good.
Tell me a little bit about that show.
So what we're doing is people consume media so quickly nowadays on things like Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a theory that people would like to see stuff from stand-up comedians more often. So rather than releasing an hour special every 2 years, we're planning on doing a 15 to 20 minute special 3 or 4 times a year. I think people are going to really like it, and this is the first attempt at doing one of those, so we'll see how it goes.
So yeah, that was the best of about 4 takes. Not very good. And given this is 2 years later, that never happened. I'd still love to be able to do something like that, but I would need to be like a touring comic who has a team and filming every show, and like it cannot be a 1-man or 2-man operation to be getting all that stuff out that consistently. I think as well, people don't really want it. Like I thought, so this is 2 years ago when we recorded this, I thought the future was 15-minute specials, but actually I was about 10 times too long. I think now people want like 15-second jokes, or they want like 2 minutes of crowd work that they can just sort of like see while they're doom scrolling and then keep, have a bit like sort of snort through their nose and then keep scrolling. And yeah, no, I was I way overestimated people's attention span. Because when we filmed this, it wasn't the era of crowd work clips on TikTok and Insta. It was still kind of specials. So yeah, I was. It's kind of funny to notice that in hindsight. That back then I thought, 15 minutes. That's not that long, but that's the perfect amount. Only to realize I was way overestimating that. The bit about being talked to by people, it's kind of like they don't relate to that, obviously, but
It's every day in Christchurch.
people try to talk to you. Yeah,
Or not talk to me.
yeah.
Actually, one of my favourite lines is the lockdown bit, and you're like, oh, this motherfucker's going to talk to me.
Well, like, dude, so I kind of forgot, like, I was going to do more if they were into it, but they weren't, so, but, like, the gist of the conversation is then saying to me, oh, lockdown, innit? And me going, oh, yeah. That's the little thing I like, is including some sort of B-roll and behind-the-scenes kind of stuff over the credits. And so yeah, that was me talking with Steve, who was also on the lineup, and then Jake. He was the one that said he liked the bit about me saying this mofo was going to talk to me. I should also say, for me, as someone who generally edits my own specials, the most satisfying part, like bar none, is being able to put that credit of written and performed by Taylor Ruddle in the credits. Like, oh man, that is like an instant hit of heroin mixed with cocaine to my to my serotonin levels in the brain. Just nothing makes me happier than seeing written and performed by Taylor Ruddle. I'm not against using writers in the future, but for now it hasn't really, well, I can't afford them, and then also, like, that hasn't really come up that could be an option yet. But for now, yeah, getting that makes me nothing else makes me feel more like a comedian than seeing written and performed by Taylor Ruddle in the credits of a special. Alrighty, so thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for indulging me and allowing me to stretch 15 minutes of content into 50 minutes of content. I really should be, if there's a Comedy Guild award for milking previous content for all it's worth, then I would be the undisputed king of that. No real plugs to get in this week. There's no quiz at Holy Moly this Tuesday, the 25th, but I am doing Beats by Bingo on the 27th at Thirsty Acres, and then, as always, the Wednesday quiz at Moi Moi. My fellow co-mayor of Hosstown, Matt Lilly, is starting up his own
comedy gig. It is going to be on the 1st of July, which is a Monday, and that is at Galaxy Bar, which used to be Arcadia, and that is from 7 o'clock. I'm going to be doing a spot on that, which you're more than welcome to pop along to. I think it's Koha, which is donation entry. And as you can tell by the fact that I do a podcast with him, I'm a big fan of Matt Lilly and and all that he stands for. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week, and I'll be back again to talk to you next Monday. Thank you for listening to Ruddle Me This. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favourite podcatcher. Follow me on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the social media platforms at Taylor Ruddle Comedy. You can also sign up to my free Patreon, which gets you all sorts of behind-the-scenes footage and extra access. It's the best way to let me know what you think of my content, or you can just hurl abuse at me. Come back next Monday for another episode of Ruddle Me This, and until then, Ruddle her out.
This has been a Tape Deck Media production. Thank you for listening.